De mare.
Welcome, welcome, family. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are joining in the world. Maskagro, that's how I say it in Nubian because I am Nubian. Bienvenue, welcome, good evening, good afternoon, bonjour, bon après-midi, bonsoir. Any other languages jump in? Assalamu alaikum, masal
Boa
khair.
noite.
There you go, there you go. Anything from you, Jihad? Masal khair.
Hello.
There we go. There we are, family. I first want to apologize for the delay in this panel coming live. I know the schedule said 12:30. As always, as is now tradition in Africa Week 2020, the tech gremlins will get us one way or another. But guess what? Today and every day, we tell them, not today, tech gremlins. You will not get in the way of us exchanging our knowledge, exchanging our power, and empowering one another. I want to quickly say welcome to these two wonderful souls, and I will ask them to introduce themselves to you in a second. I want to now just let you briefly know what we are going to be discussing here and what we mean by science diplomacy. We mean the exchange of knowledge in a way that is meant to help us as a community, as a people of African ancestry, to collectively move forward for our holistic and comprehensive and genuine liberation as a people, not just on the continent, but everywhere around the world. Because we are rooted in Africa, whether we are on the continent or in the diaspora. The root, the seed is on the continent, but we have branched out. Whether it was willing or unwilling, we have branched out and we have leaves everywhere. How do we make sure these leaves are all connected to the same root, that is the continent? And how do we exchange what we know through marrying ancestral knowledge, traditional knowledge, with institutional science that they call today and that you have to compete so hard to get in today, only for them later to find out that what our ancestors have been saying all along has been the truth. So, with me here, I have Jihad and I have Katusha, and they will both be doing the introduction, the Africa Week 2020 way. It is my privilege as the mother of Africa Week 2020 to welcome you to the family. Know that now you're in, there's no out. We're going to be calling on you to come back time and time again to share your wisdom that you continue to grow. The way we introduce ourselves here, you tell us who you are, you tell the family what keeps you up at night, and you tell them whether they are watching live or watching later, and you tell them how can we help you sleep better with what keeps you up at night. So Katusha, we start with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katusha. I am Brazilian. I finished my PhD in sociology and social policy, but apart from my academic interest in race and decolonial studies, I am a lecturer on race and decolonial studies at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. I have also a lot of interest of herbology and to be a healer of my community, and this is who I am. What keeps me up at night? projects that I never say no to. And I have very little time to sleep, and but I'm trying to balance out everything. So between being awake, doing my projects, and trying to meditate, that's what keeps me up at night. The family could help me by connecting in vibrations of love, and elevating our thoughts into different connections that would allow us, to be the leaves that are connected to the roots. And I think that's how we can meet everyone in this elevation of our thoughts, our feelings, and our vibrations. Yeah, I share.
Ashe, Ashe. Please write your contacts in the private chat. I don't know if you can see the private chat if you are connected
Yeah.
on your phone. Write your contacts that you're comfortable to share with the family, and I will put this in the comments so they know how to follow your work at least.
Sure.
Jihad, welcome to Africa Week 2020. Tell us who you are.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Jihad Mashamon, and I recently passed my VIPA for my PhD.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, and it was actually one of the examiner committee was deemed a supervisor. It wasn't easy to go with. He wasn't easy, but I enjoyed the challenge he gave me,
We
which
don't do
explains this hairstyle that I've been having lately in the middle of the night and keeping me up night. But if I may continue, my research is focused on security studies in Africa and in the Middle East, where I look into countries supporting rebel groups or armed political Islamist groups to advance their own interests. On the other hand, in the middle of my PhD, I decided to diverse and go into nonviolent resistance within the context of learning how to help the Sudanese nonviolent resistance movement. And actually, that happened before the nonviolent resistance movement appeared on its own, which is incredible history in the making we're all going for in Sudan now. And I'm excited about this because it's been, and I believe Dima can relate to this. It's been a while since, it's been for a long time we've been hoping for this revolution to happen. And a revolution is a continual process, not just removing a regime. It's a continual process. And that's what has been keeping me also up at night, writing about Sudan and connecting with people, learning from their views on how we can help Sudan, the youth movement, and of course, trying to avoid the politicians in Sudan, avoid them as much as possible. They're the same. They're all the same. The communists, the Ummah, the others, they're all the same. But I respect they have their opinions. I respect that. That's a good thing. But I say as a youth, we need to have new blood in us, and new. There's a word the Italians know how to say it in a much better way. Okay, I forgot the word sadly. They need new energy, new blood. We can't be relying on the same group of people to change Sudan. And that's why I'm actually excited to be part of the family. And I look forward to learning from your experiences and thoughts about how nonviolent resistant tactics could be used to maintain democracy in Sudan against potential military takeovers. I think they still have a plan.
potential jihad. Potential. The vice president is the genocidal terrorist responsible of the murder of more than 300,000 people. Potential. Come on.
I agree with you.
I digress.
I agree that I mean that he put us all in an awkward position, and he knows the people don't like him that much, but he put us in an awkward position at the moment.
We didn't do anything. We did. We did the second we paused. As you said, revolutions continue. Revolutions continue means yes, we need to find other ways to. And this is a revolution of consciousness. This isn't a revolution of hunger. This isn't a revolution for bread. This is a revolution for dignity. This is a revolution of consciousness. To get the dignity, it starts with digging to the roots of who we are.
Precisely, and that's why I look into this kind of stuff, because everyone keeps on saying it's a revolution of the hungry, and that's how we went on process that has been happening for a while now, and no one really focused on how these social movements had appeared in Sudan outside of the central mainstream politics. The doctors' union that is operating now.
This is a great segue, Jihad, to say that if you're studying nonviolent resistance and proof, even further proof to say that this revolution is a revolution of consciousness and it's much bigger than Sudan and it's not just about Sudan, as we have been saying or at least some of us have been saying all along, is that that same revolution that is happening in Sudan is happening in Brazil. And Katusha will be sharing with us what is happening with the Quilombo community and how they are sparking their revolution. They're airing the flames to reclaim what is theirs, to reclaim land, to reclaim the language, to reclaim the knowledge. And what better way for non-violent resistance than diplomacy, science diplomacy. I think science is one of the best examples of non-violent resistance because you cannot argue with facts.
Precisely. And that's why I always get into events, seminars, to meet people, to learn from their perspective, and to connect with them and to see how we can do it for Sudan, maintain the democracy that we've been all fighting for and expand further. Because we need new blood. I believe we all need new blood. We can't rely on the same politics again and again or recycle whatever the others want to dump on us.
Have it until we shatter. We will continue to have that until we fully unshackle. The thing is, you know what? The shackle has been broken, but somehow we still keep our hands there. Like the shackles, the martyrs broke the shackles. They broke them in their martyrdom, in their sacrifice and their martyrdom. They broke these shackles. Yet somehow we are taking the rest of the chain and we are tying ourselves back to it. We say, no, we're not moving. We're staying here. We're staying here. We're staying here. So let me take this again to the global level, because so far the day has been very Sudan charged. And I think the best way to show the family that we are all connected is to see that, you know what, this is a continued struggle. This is a continuous struggle from here, from where you are. I mean, we're all connected to Africa, but none of us are in Africa right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's on its own, another discourse on its own.
So, given your field, race colonialism.
Yes. Well, I totally agree with you in terms of how we are connected in terms of this struggle. My research was with Black Brazilian women who identify with any construction of Blackness, and that's in the entire spectrum of racial identity, especially in the Brazilian context, which is going to be a little bit difficult to translate right now, maybe for another conversation, but people could have more than 100 names to categorize a Black identity in Brazil. Okay, so these Black women were participating and thinking with me what it's like to be a Black woman living in the UK, living in the British setting, and more specifically in England. And through the narratives, I could understand that the institutions, the informal interactions of the daily lives are pretty much colonial, meaning we're not living in a post-colonial times. We're not living in post-racial times. And because of that, I could bridge the conversation with what is happening in Brazil, how the institutions are also not ready for people who were already there. I'm talking about indigenous people in Brazil, and we can even extend that to Latin American and the Caribbean, but also the Black people who helped building the country. And all those buildings, all those institutions, and the entire understanding of what we say nowadays as a nation that Black people, indigenous people helped building are not made for them, for us. And because of that, the structure of democracy is not ready for the people. And through this colonial understanding, when a nation is founded through colonial roots and capitalist values, we are not going to be able to experience democracy. Even if, and I'm sorry if I'm being very blunt here, if we have new blood, what kind of blood do we want to engage with our values of democracy? So this is the epistemological knowledge that I think it's very valid for this conversation. How are we reproducing science, considering that what we learn is a very Eurocentric perspective of science, of knowledge, and therefore the concepts that we try to weave or try to challenge. But I think we need to start negotiating new vernacular, new words, being more subversive to the ways we are engaging with the meanings of the revolution.
Yes. And please, you don't ever need to be sorry here, because as I said, these are all informal conversations that we are having so that they are accessible to everyone. They are accessible to the experts, the PhD holders like you all are, and the people who have no sense of like modern outside imposed formal education, you know? No, Iman, please join the conversation. I'm gonna drop the link right now. I'm gonna send you the link right now. Please join, because this is another queen here who is talking about what we are talking about here. This knowledge that we have, that we share, as you said, at the end of the day, it is from Eurocentric, institutionalized means of interaction that we need to jump through hoops and I don't know what to get to, you know, to actually enter these institutions. Forget that your ancestors built that very institution for them to sit in.
Yeah.
We're going to leave that on the side here for a second. But even the access to the knowledge that is being shared there is knowledge that is erasing your ancestors, whether it is the ones who built it or the ones that imposed upon them that knowledge to start with. They took it and then they twerked it, and then they used this knowledge against the descendants of the actual people who provided this information, which is why I'm saying, why do we, this is the need for the question for this here is, why do we need Afro-centric science diplomacy? Why do we need to look at the Pan-African research landscape? And I'm not just talking about African researchers. I am talking about, I have two things here, my laptop and this, because as you can see, we're all over here with this discussion. Why do we need to be able to connect researchers, African researchers and researchers of African ancestry, to one another? Because you are now at Edinburgh University. How many students do you have who are of African ancestry? How many of them have the goal of either connecting or returning or going back to give to the community or be engaged? You don't have to go back, because you're not back in Brazil, but you're still working for your community from everywhere you are. Yeah?
Yeah.
How many of them are there? How many of us are opening the way, holding the gates wide open to tell the rest of our people, our emerging researchers, come through, we're going to hold the door for you? How many of us? This is why I feel we really need to have this conversation. I know you're not, but I'm so grateful that you joined. Please tell us how you are doing. What are you doing to pass this torch? What are you doing to enrich the Pan-African research landscape?
Well, first of all, I take my job as a responsibility, because I believe education is transformative, but not the education, the Eurocentric one, the education that passes on the responsibility to all people to understand that they can transform the situation in which we are. And if you don't like it, you change it, you do something about it. So I, not only as a lecturer, but also as a spiritual daughter of my community, I engage in many activities. We are now in the Quilombo I am part of, which is like a Maranhão, a group of people settled in a rural area in Brazil, based on an Afro-centric perspective of how our spiritual grounds are the kind of guidance that we have to develop any activity that we develop. And this one is an educational one to help young Black people, but not only Black, to be honest, all people, to have access, marginalized people, to have access to free education in the public universities. And this educational project is not only passing on the requirements for these youngsters to be approved in these universities, but with an Afrocentric perspective, so they can be critical about what they are being taught and what is expected from them. I'm also helping co-founding a free university with Afro and Indigenous perspectives in Brazil, to be delivering small and long courses on many different things, including how to manage the schools of samba right now, because the schools of samba in Brazil are being highly managed by the white community, and how can we bring back this power of our Black ancestors and take, you know, the front line of this of our activities, of our projects, of our roots, actually. So these are all the side jobs that I have, and I'm here.
Don't ever say no to projects. If these are the projects you get involved, don't ever say no.
I can never say no.
Don't.
So yes, at the moment I am also being led through my heart, but I know I'm saying this, and by any means, when I say it's keeping me up, and sometimes I'm exhausted physically, it's something that makes me wake up and want go for more, you know. So it's inspiring and it's like energizing. But I just wanted to respond to something that you said about this Eurocentric perspective, and it's one of the panels that I really would love to be discussing here in the Africa 2020, which is the science that our ancestors developed in terms of creating remedies, knowing how to heal a community. And this was appropriated, as you said. They took all this knowledge, they twisted, and they formed the nation, and they formed the institutions. And they also created patents for the drugs that we need to survive now. And this is so I would say problematic, for a lack of a better word, but it's actually part of the genocide of our people. So if we have that acknowledged in a way that we can teach each other how to find ways and tools to heal, to create our remedies, to educate each other, to find liberation through the knowledge of our ancestors, I think that would be amazing, and in a loving, ethical way, because we know that the capitalist values can make us compete and make us feel, or having the need to belittle or inferiorize other people. So we should break free through this kind of shackles of colonialism. Yeah.
Sing it louder.
I am so sorry I have to leave. It was a pleasure. Iman, I will stay a little longer just to listen to you.
Thank you so much for what you were saying. I feel so blessed. Like, I just logged on and heard you talking and said, oh my God, that's my whole MO is breaking down the shackles of colonialist thought, and how our epistemological limitations have been imposed on us through this, exactly what you're talking about, this Eurocentric. It's such a deep form of colonialism to colonize the mind. And I'm realizing as I, go through higher academia, just how colonized we are, having just come from Africa and working there. Even there, it is so colonial that we don't even know how to begin to break the shackles of that thinking in our own scientific practices, in our own epistemological practices. We don't think about how in our own practice, in our own academic circles, in our own fields of expertise, on some levels, we're also complicit in perpetuating that colonialism. And that's what scares me the most. It terrifies me that we're not even aware of it because it's so generational now. And so we have to be almost militant, almost warrior-like in breaking those shackles apart. It's exactly. Really, it's necessary because it's so ingrained into our psyche that exactly what you were saying, Katusha, about how basically all Eurocentric thinking reflects capitalism, and we don't realize that how deep that capitalism really is. It reflects into our spirituality or lack thereof on a lot of pretenses. It's been destroyed in us so much because capitalism and spirituality do not go hand in hand. They don't mix on any level. So I applaud you, and I think it's really necessary to break down that thought process that we are colonized to the point that we're not even aware of it, and it terrifies me.
Yes, I will confess I'm a bit emotional to see all these people, amazing people, how, I don't know, I never met you before, but there's so many things that are connecting. I can feel it, it's a conversation, it's a dialogue that we have to have, and we need to learn this path to connect. So thank you, Dima, to make it happen.
No, we are
It's beautiful.
Thank you for jumping in, because if you didn't jump in, it would have just been Jihad and I, which Jihad and I always have fantastic conversation. And as you will see, this conversation will continue. But also, you have now given people a little glimpse. For you, family tuning in, Katusha will be coming back on Saturday, and we will be discussing, the panel we are having is from Komombo to Kilombo. The Afro-centric struggle, the global Afro-centric struggle. You will learn more about her work, and hopefully we'll have another panel earlier in the day as well. She will come back to me with the information and we will plant it. And I'm serious, if you want to have the breakdown of the Eurocentric system, you already have someone with you who will co-host, who will co-organize and co-rip it with you, because Iman is a voice to be reckoned with. She will be in the panel later on today, discussing the need for Afrocentric archaeology and the need for, yes, because you know what they say, history is written by the victor, but archaeology tells the truth. And what kind of truth do we trust if the people telling the truth and doing the archaeology are not Black?
Fantastic. Is it okay if I just switch off my camera and my mic, but I will still be listening to you? I'll be here. Okay, I will just be walking to. It was a pleasure meeting you all. I am here with my ears and all attention.
Whenever you want to hop back on, do it. Just,
okay.
Come back and say yes, just like that. We're with you.
All right.
All right.
Many kisses to you all.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay.
Iman.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dima. It was really amazing. I just logged on my computer and heard that, and just all my skin started crawling.
It's what we do here. We make things crawl. We need to make them rise, only because it's battle time very soon, and we need to be awake, as you said, warriors, and so spears up and all. Iman, if you can take a moment to introduce yourself to the family. How we do it here at Africa Week 2020 is you say who you are, what keeps you up at night, and how can the family help you sleep better.
Okay. My name is Iman Naji. I'm a graduate student at UCLA. I do archaeology. I do indigenous anthropology, and I focus on Northeast Africa, which is where I'm from. I'm Northeast African. And yeah, I'm fighting to decolonize our methodologies and decolonize our theoretical approaches, basically destroy the field from the ground up and work for a new future, because the trajectory that we're going in, it's not hopeful at all, and it's not changing at all. And it's, I think, in terms of my field with archaeology, what's happening is a lot of countries are just banning foreigners now as a result of these decades of colonial endeavors. And that is furthering a divide for, I think, a prosperous future between the diaspora, the African diaspora that needs to be in Africa, that needs to know its history, that needs to work here and participate and contribute their voice, because this is their lineage, their ancestry, everything that does not belong to the West, they own, and they should be here working with us. So
What do you mean we are banning archaeologists?
I mean, like Egypt, for example, just all foreign missions are on halt. They're not giving out permits as well. Ethiopia as well is closing a lot of that. I can't speak for Sudan. I don't know what's going on there, but I know Ethiopia and Egypt have really laid the law down with foreign missions.
No, in Sudan, if you have enough money, you're good. You can come and dig wherever you want to dig.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more complex than that. It's a little bit more complex than that, Dima.
Is it really? How does Qatar have an entire museum of Nubian antiquities? How does Qatar have an entire museum?
Come on, it's Sheikh Moza. Sheikh Moza. They can't say no to her.
Sheikh Moza came without money. My Sheikh Moza came with her money. What does Sheikh Moza have except money that allowed them to go to Sudan and take these pictures and have a photo crew come? If it weren't for Qatar's money, yes, Qatar brought Western archaeologists. I'm not going to say no. And I'm not even dismissing the work that came. I'm just saying there was a price to be paid, and that price is paid by the indigenous of the land. That price continues to be paid by the indigenous of the land. When our antiquities are taken out of our land and then put in museums, of which the museums will charge people to go to, and then that money goes to the institution that then filters through to the government, and none of that money comes back to the indigenous. That's unacceptable. That cannot continue. And so, yes, it's as simple as the money. If you have enough money to bribe the people in power, to allow you to do your digging, to allow you to take the antiquities you like, put them on your planes and your jets and fly them out of the country in the middle of the night.
I remember that. Yes, I remember those stories.
These are truths.
I mean, I know about it.
We tell little kids, and then we close the stories, and then we put them on shelves. This is the truth.
It's what I'm saying. It's more complicated talking about now. I mean, now it's complex for our friends to take money in front of everyone else. It's really complex because before.
You really think this transitional government right now is not taking money under the table? Really?
Dima, we have 4 transitional governments in one. We have 4.
And each of these transitional governments are taking money under the table, which is why Sudan is not moving in any direction, which is why I say the revolution continues.
I agree.
Every one of them. 4, 5, 6, 17 million more transitional governments, as long as justice is not served, and justice will continue not to be served as long as we are complicit in this madness.
I agree with you, and that's why, if I may mention, I'm sure this would be interesting for. Sorry, when someone says interesting, it means the vocabulary is weak. I apologize. This would be fascinating for everyone. So I found when I'm entering events or anything about Sudan, people are saying from the diaspora, "How can we contribute for Sudan?" And I've actually this made me realize this incredible trend going around from diaspora, Sudanese diaspora, saying, "How can we contribute to our country?" And I went to some seminars or some
That's a start.
yeah, and I went to some seminars and some group meetings, and they all had this amazing programs. I'll be more than happy to share some contacts. They had these amazing programs and ideas. They're to figure out mechanisms to create this vision a reality of connecting the diaspora to local development and how the diaspora can be connected to producing local development rather than just sending out money to their families. The how.
Beyond even creating these programs, we have to go back to the same, to the heart of the issue, like what Katusha and Iman are talking about. If these programs are not rooted in the Afrocentricity of the issue,
I see your point.
then it is pointless to design or co-design any of these programs. Because if these programs are going to be complicit in regurgitating a narrative that is simply delusional.
It's I do agree on that part. However, the part that I actually found more fascinating in these meetings I went to when they speak about diaspora contribution is that they did highlight that the Sudanese diaspora feels different compared to the local diaspora, local Sudanese, and that when they're coming out with their experience to Sudan to help and everything, they're treated by equal professionals who've been based in Sudan all their lives differently. It's like you think you're more sophisticated than us, you're better than us. We're gonna have to
This
listen.
is how it's done. This is how it's
Yeah.
done. I was part of these programs that are designing them. And yes, we are going with this sense of entitlement, like, look, we're abroad, we know how things work. Look, we know how to organize events. We need to go there as sponges. Because you know what?
Exactly.
They have survived.
I agree.
They have survived and they continue to survive for what they know. And this is why I'm saying, and this is why this panel is very important. Because the knowledge those of us in the diaspora acquire from, these fancy institutions and
It's too fancy.
the scholarships that we get from Exeter or from Yale or from UCLA or even from HBCU campuses, are flawed and are incomplete, and they are incomplete because they do not involve and they do not integrate ancestral teaching, the traditional teaching of the land these institutions are on. I'm not even going to say African teaching. I won't.
I agree 100%, 100%. And I think that I'm really starting to question the value of the education at all, to be honest with you. The more that you deconstruct it, the more useless it is. It's reflective of Western imperialism, of Western capitalism. In my opinion, and maybe it's a bit controversial, but the problem with Northeast Africa and probably a lot of Africa in general is that our leadership wants to mimic the West. So everything. Well, yeah, if you have a leadership,
That's the problem.
there's a lot of people who would disagree with that here as well. But my point is that it's just on a cultural level. Even you can even see it on some levels with the indigenous, that there is a desire to mimic the West. That the West is the height of what you can achieve in life. Is a Western kind of existence. And our existences, indigenous existence, village life is not, we don't glamorize it. We want to get out. We don't want to go back. We're not satisfied with what we perceive and what we've been socialized to perceive as simple. It's the reason that in my field, people are obsessed with pyramids and monuments. It's the reason why Sudanese archaeology focuses on Merowe and Napata and not the indigenous villages and not the settlement archaeology. It all ties in to what our values are. And we don't value even our ancestors on a even in Northeast Africa, I can say. A lot of my generation wants to get out and wants to go to Exeter and Yale and UCLA. And for what? To become what?
Because of the shiny logos. But this is why I'm saying, what is the responsibility of Black researchers, of African ancestry? And I mean it in all fields. I don't mean just in politics or social sciences, archaeology, anthropology. I don't just mean social. I mean in all fields. I mean the epistemology, the STEM, all the STEM fields, all the whether you're in technology, whether you are in life sciences, hard sciences, whatever it is, in sports, in drama, whatever you are doing, what is the role of those in Black sciences and Black research in the Pan-African research landscape? What is our role to do that, to marry these two sciences? What can we do?
We have to treat all indigenous ways as equal, and even the word indigenous, it creates this othering of science versus village or something like that. But we need to treat the ancestral and indigenous ways of life on equal footing as we do for scientific Western data. If we see it differently, we see it in two different realms, when a lot of indigenous ways of life qualify as Western science. So it's a social disconnect, I think.
Okay. Jihad?
I mean, there is a social disconnect. I've always said, as a Sudanese, wherever we go, we have an impact, and we need to make a positive impact. For example, like, I try to understand the British foreign policy and the American foreign policy with regard to Sudan. It's really overwhelmingly complex. So I said, why don't I just join think tanks and see how they're viewing things and show them our perspective also. Nah, I mean, if you look at, I'm sure all of you, most of you have noticed more than me, is that these think tanks and policymakers, they have a lot of more impact because they have a direct channel with the government officials. Now, if we look at academia, yes, it does have impact, but not much as think tanks and policy centers. I mean, and the reason for that, you look at this, you have 72 students to teach, an institution like university like Exeter, the greatest institution of bureaucracy, self-serving bureaucracy. They take everything out of you. They don't give you time to think how to help you. And it's incredible. That's why Dima had an incredible supervisor. He managed to have the time to think and to contribute not only to the UK, to Sudan and to the UK, but those around.
There needs to be a square somewhere for Tim Niblock in Sudan.
There is. I met the guy, by the way. I've always admired him. Tim.
No, then I'm saying there needs to be a square. لازم يكون في ميدان اسمه ميدان تيم نيبلوك في السودان بس.
Don't worry, when we go back to Sudan, I'll make sure that happens.
ماليش دعوه بالخرطوم. I'm doing it in Nuba.
I'll put it in El Khartoum. I'll put it in front of the airport.
Should, at some point during my PhD, the top 3 people of any embassy of Sudan around the world had studied under Tim Niblock at some point in their life.
I realize that even now, if you look at it now from this perspective, and that's why I believe people will be interested in Sudan again, is because of China. China's been investing heavily in Africa, so I think now the world will be focused on Sudan generally to see how can they counter that investment or to encourage Sudan to go to the West again. Although Sudan never left to the West, Sudan has always been trying to get the attention of the West. But now China's in, and now everyone is going to focus on Sudan again. And importantly, Sudan has even been actually having a strong contribution into China now. They recently appointed a new ambassador to China, according to what I heard from Tim.
Well, it goes, well, yes.
But,
Though
but
that's not the purpose, though. But then it goes again to what Iman was saying, in that these leaders, these so-called leaders, really misleaders is a much better word. These misleaders on the continent are very desperately appeasing the West. And not just the West, they are appeasing the international system. It's not an international community, because community stands together. They are an international system, or an arena, more like it, because they are watching. Um, but this has been the case since the so-called pretend independence movement, that the wave that happened in the 50s and the 60s, the end of the 50s and the 60s, because this is how they got the so-called independence. By guaranteeing the colonizer that the system they put in place will continue.
they did that in Sudan, yes. I do agree, they did
No,
that.
no, I'm not talking just about
And,
Sudan. And
and the
it's
rest,
very important for us to take our mindset away from just the countries that we come from. It's
but,
very
but,
important. It's monumental. Right now, in the junction we are in the global Black Lives Movement that is going on, because the Black Lives Movement is not just in the United States, it is a global Black Lives Movement. What's happening in Brazil is happening in Japan, is happening in South Africa, is happening in Nigeria, is boiling up and about to blow up in southern Cameroon, is happening in Mali with their so-called coup. It's happening in Ethiopia, and mark my words, what's about to happen in Ethiopia, thanks to what Egypt and the United Arab Emirates are doing through Eritrea. Again, they continue to use us against each other to entirely redraw this map, and it cannot be allowed. And the only reason it's being allowed is because each of us is talking about our countries. We are literally taking their borders that they imposed on us, and we are erecting them up so that we stop looking at what's happening. When if we just jump up and take a peek, we'll realize that the military base that the United Arab Emirates has in Eritrea, that it has Egypt running so that it can put its finger on Ethiopia the day they decide to do something with Sudan, so that they trigger that war out of Kosala in Sudan.
it's complex, I know. It's complex.
And that's just getting started. And when you say it's about China, and China will take a look at what's happening in Sudan, and now the world will start paying attention in Sudan. No, because you know what? As they continue to focus on China, they're not paying attention to what France is doing in attempting to annex Darfur out of Sudan, because they want to hold on the gold, because West Africans are trying to go for their own currency in an African currency that is backed by gold. And if that happens, 60% of the French economy crumbles. And if they crumble without having their hand on the gold that's coming out of Darfur, then that's France for you. And so what they're trying to do is to have their hands on the gold in Darfur by taking Darfur altogether out of Sudan and putting it with Chad, which is France's military base in Africa.
Yeah, no, we know that, yeah.
So we need to stop looking at Sudan just as Sudan, or Egypt just as Egypt, because, while we're talking about Egypt, and Egypt is rolling up its sleeves to go into Libya, guess who's helping and orchestrating the military into Libya? That's the genocidal terrorist that we currently have as vice president of Sudan. Mind you, he's also generating the wide terrorist network that runs from Al-Shabaab in Somalia to Al-Qaeda in Mali to Boko Haram in Nigeria, right back to the Janjaweed in Sudan. So what's happening in Sudan is not just about Sudan, and this is why we need every kind of researcher, every kind of discipline, whether academic, community leader, consumer, all. We need them all in one space so that these dots can be connected. This is why I'm saying we have a role here as people who have studied abroad, as people who not just consumed this way of knowledge, but the people that are able to connect it to what's happening on the ground, because we've been here and we've been there.
Yep.
And we see the discrepancies and we see where they don't add up. And it is our, not just role, it is our responsibility. We will get not just punished, we will get cursed until the end of time and back. And we continue to deserve what happens to us as a people for as long as we go to sleep, not sharing what we know.
I I agree on that, and I mean, we just need to frame it in a way that they see it valuable. I mean, I
Who's
mean,
the
policymakers. I mean, that's only. I mean, that's from my side perspective. Sorry, that's my perspective. I mean, policymakers. That's why I'm focusing a lot with think tanks and policymakers because I know they have a direct route to the governments, and certain policymaker governments listen to certain policymaker think tanks. So that's why I've always tried to frame it within the way that sounds not threatening to them or not concerning to them. Because if we go in and tell them about capitalism and this kind of stuff, they might get excited because they used to be like us, researchers and everything. But it's their bosses and these guys, they won't get excited. Like, okay, this sounds a little bit of an activist.
Well,
And
those people, they need to be made obsolete then. They're not serving their people. They're not their roles need to be demolished. If they're not serving the exact agenda Dima was just saying, why are they policymakers? What are they doing? What authority should they have to make any policy if they're not thinking about these very relevant issues?
I mean,
If the concept of capitalism to them is a joke when their entire country is suffering because of it, then they shouldn't be a policymaker. I very pro the position of retaking these roles. These roles by mindless bureaucrats do nothing for the people. They do nothing. Why spend your effort to influence them if they're not doing anything up until this point?
Let me ask you this question, Jihad.
okay.
Do you think Hamdok right now, Hamdok, who's the current civilian prime minister of Sudan, do you think he's a policymaker?
He's a researcher more than a policymaker.
Okay, so maybe we put him to the side. Who do you think is a policymaker in Sudan right now?
Policymaker in Sudan? What do you mean by policymaker? If I may ask that question, that's a better question.
That's precisely my point. Thank you. That is precisely my point. When you say you are working with think tanks to impact policymakers, who made the policymakers policymakers? If it's not the people that put them in a position to make policy, then who made the policymakers? Because right now, this facade of a transitional government that exists in Sudan, because it is a facade of a transitional government, it is not a transitional government, because mark my words, this thing will stick like glue if we don't set fire to it all so that it all melts and collapses. Who made them where they currently are? It wasn't policymakers.
It wasn't a policy.
The people rose, the community rose. And so our role here as researchers, as scientists, as seekers of knowledge, as keepers of knowledge, because that's what we are before anything else. Our role is to communicate what we know to the people, because it is the people who will move, it is the people who will rise, it is the people who need to rise and claim and reclaim what has been taken from us.
Of course.
It is the people who know how things run. Our communities then and the village that Iman is saying is so desperate to try to escape or trying to run up. Our villages had their own politics. They made decisions, they made policy, they communicated with other villages. We had protocol, we have protocol, we have ways for conflict resolution. All of these things are things that the institutions you and I studied in went there to learn how they did it.
Yes, of course. And wrote books about it.
How can we communicate it to the people, not the policymakers, not anywhere in building? Because I am personally consciously choosing to where I make my knowledge accessible. Everyone needs to be able to access it. I take issue. This is why all the events I personally plan, they are free. They are free. They are free. And when I invite people to them, like Nuclear Fest that happened last week, when we approached a few researchers and scholars, and to my submission, a good chunk of them were African scholars or scholars of African ancestry. The response to me was, "Why are you free? Are you crazy? Like, how much are you going to pay me to come and share my knowledge?" I was like, "You are sharing your knowledge with people who you went to study. If you're not going to give it back to them, what point was your knowledge? How much did you pay them to go do your research? Did you pay them? You know what I mean? We have a responsibility to give it back to the people. How do we do it?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, with regards to the people who ask you why you're making it for free, I believe they put value and they know their value. That's something else, though. And that explains why they say why it's for free. Because if you tell people it's for money, they'll come in, they'll be interested. But for free, yeah, they'll say no, it's not my time. I mean, that's what I think they were thinking, but hopefully not. I'm sure. I always believe there's something positive. With regards to policymakers and the people, there's a huge disconnect. If you remember, even in the case of Sudan, sorry, even if I'm referring to Sudan a lot, if you remember the case of Sudan, Al Badawi, the minister of finance, I can see Dima now.
What happens لما تجيب سيرة ناس
He came with a policy of neoliberal economics. It was neoliberal economics. We all know about it, neoliberalism, and he got it from the World Bank. At the end of the day, he used to work in the World Bank. I do understand he tried to integrate Sudan to the international financial system. It's a complex word that everyone keeps on using, from the IMF to the World Bank and everyone else. But it was a harsh assist program. It was really harsh. He was calling for subsidy cuts and everything, and allowing prices to increase for consecutive months in a row. And people at the end, they got tired of it. At the end, he quit, of course. But that was because of internal politics happening in the government. He didn't quit because he was against the program, but it was internal politics in the government. Now, the people, on the other hand, they always ask the question is, we actually brought these people because they're experts in their fields. They're qualified. But why can't they do something that is reflective of reality? I mean, that's what I would assume, and that's what I realize every time they go out and protest.
That's what you are assuming. People are not in power or in the positions they are in because they are experts in their positions. Because I can right now to you name at least five for every single position who are experts in their position. These people are in these positions because it is known that these people will follow orders. And they will follow the agenda that is set to follow orders. And the orders that are being followed are Arab orders. Arabizing Sudan.
If I may, I mean, we have two different thoughts here happening. The first one, the people, when they selected Hamdouk and everyone, Hamdouk and the government.
Hamdouk, you're acting like there was an election, Jihad. Other people selected Hamdouk. Hamdouk was paraded over as a civilian.
Yes, he wasn't elected. I wish he was elected. I'm saying he wasn't elected. I agree with you on that, of course. But I'm saying that's what everyone I speak to in Sudan are telling me. We expect that these are highly qualified people. And then I always go back to the question is, one moment, how did you all select these people? And who selected them, brought the names? Who brought these names? I've always asked myself, who brought Hamdouk and the other people into the list that you guys are speaking about? Of course, can you hear me? I thought the computer froze. Of course. Okay.
Incense on.
No worries. And of course, it shows there's a discrepancy again between the people, the policymakers. There's a big discrepancy happening. The policymakers, the government, have a different idea. They didn't communicate with the people their agenda. It's obvious until now, and sadly, they didn't communicate what is the agenda they're following, what are the challenges, and how they plan to overcome those challenges. And the people in Sudan are worried about that. That explains what's happening. On the other hand, we look at the military. This is the part that Dima would, of course, appreciate, I hope, is that the military sees the government as a managers only, that they're here to fulfill a program only, till the elections where they can come back to power again, the former regime. That's how the military sees the government. Now, with regards to regional and international powers, I realize they don't really care about Sudan that much. They really don't care about Sudan that much, sadly. And that's why I took it a personal mission to see how to connect what's happening to Sudan to policymakers, regionally and internationally, if possible, to say why Sudan matters and why a civilian government for Sudanese people matter more than supporting military officers. At the end of the day, Sudan, I believe, we can have our interests both for the regional order, international order, and our country, of course, as a top priority. And that's why I believe researchers, we are important in this role, communicating exactly what's happening in Sudan to these governments and regional organizations and international organizations, and how they can help in Sudan rather than imposing their own solutions on Sudan, on our countries.
Their interest is not to that. Their interest is not it's only to impose. I mean, I think you're between you and Dima, it illustrates two sides of a coin of somebody who believes that government is functioning for people and is trying to strategize how to navigate that, and then somebody who sees it as a front for political gain and greed and corruption. And I think from my neutral standpoint is that they both exist. But as a Northeast African, I can't say that I believe in any government in Northeast Africa. They're also, excuse me, it's all a front for greed, for lining people's pockets. There is no policymaker that is genuinely interested in the benefit of the people. And if they are, in as much as they can benefit personally, in my opinion.
So then I want to take back this conversation to the role of researchers and scientists and science in general. Empowering them. I don't mean to anything within a country or a particular country. I mean how to empower our people, because knowledge is power, right?
Of course. Potential power.
Sorry?
Potential power. I'm sorry.
No, it's not potential power. Knowledge is power also.
Okay.
Knowledge is even wrong knowledge is power. Because even wrong knowledge allows us to see the direction we need to go. If I am speaking to someone carrying and spreading wrong knowledge, that person is going with an arrow over their head, telling me that person needs to be taken out.
I would say it's the perspective, Dima. I mean, everyone has a different perspective.
Yes, okay, I'm with you there. But can we agree that having knowledge, however it ends up being used, wherever you end up getting it, this knowledge that you hold is a power, and how you wield that power is entirely up to you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We agree on that.
Absolutely.
Precisely.
And that power, that knowledge has been reduced to, we're not proud of it as Africans. We're not proud of our indigenous knowledge. That has been stripped from us. The pride in our own ways.
Is it that you don't even know it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You have people who don't know this knowledge. They don't. I don't know my language. If I don't know my language, how am I going to know what knowledge is in my language that exists? It's all written on the walls, ironically. It's all written on the walls.
You can see it there.
I can't access it because I don't understand this language. what good is this indigenous knowledge? Because even those who know it don't speak my language. My aunt knows this knowledge. She doesn't speak Arabic, and I don't speak Nubian.
Mm.
Yeah. So how can we use technology? How can we use what we learn in our respective institutions, in our methodologies of acquiring knowledge, of research design, because we all had to write for our research. We all had to write research methodology and literature reviews. Yeah. Now some of these things are interviews as primary sources of knowledge. How can we make it and co-create some form of database of pan-African knowledge where we have our resources, we have our primary resources in all the languages. They are oral history, they are uh, videos, they are whatever they are. If they are written, like every time I go see my uncle or something in the village, listen and draw out the family tree. You know,
Mm.
they're masterpieces because every time they remember a new branch and a new branch, and now I'm connected to four different villages, and I have knowledge of the relatives and keep it going.
Sounds like a Swiss family. Yes.
How do we do it? What can we do? Like if we were to come up with action plans, baby steps, because we do have
Mentorship, I think, is key.
mentorship.
Mentorship, creating a community, a network where we pool all of our resources and we prioritize mentorship for the next generation. We have to mentor each other. We have to help each other to get to these positions, to teach the knowledge that you might get at Exeter, I might get at UCLA or at Yale, whatever. We have to give that knowledge away. We can't hold it. It's not our DNA is not capitalist. It's community. We are the opposite, and we have to realize that and have to help the next generation for free. We can't have expectation. Unfortunately, it's a shitty reality, but it's our reality. But we have to do it for free and give more of whatever we can give. Unfortunately, that's the world. Our people are disenfranchised. They are systematically set up to fail. So we have to help them in that way.
We
There's,
help ourselves.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to take you to Comrade Jihad on that term before I come back to tell you about the program that we have here at
Mm.
Africa Week 2020 that speaks exactly to what you're saying, Iman. But Jihad, what do you feel we can do? Like if you were to say 3 steps we can start implementing right now as African researchers or as researchers or scientists of African ancestry, to those of us on the continent or not, what are 3 things we can do? We can start doing.
I mean, thinking about it, and this is where I agree also with Iman, is mentoring the coming generation about how we can use what we learned and teach it to them or share it with them and how they can use it to help their own countries also or our home countries and also inspire the generation next to them or their colleagues and give them what we can in terms of information or analysis of what we have and how we can empower them further. I mean, of course, it just has to go outside of academia. I mean, it can't be within academia, a classroom setting, the professional way. It doesn't work anymore. And that's a great thing about the youth, I find, especially when I'm teaching students. Actually, I learn a lot from them when I speak with them rather than just share, spoon feed them the information. I learn a lot because from their ideas. And people like to work with their hands. They don't like to sit in the office. And I realized the same thing. I don't like to sit in the office. I like to move around, speak with people, get to know them. Like, okay, how can, and I literally ask people, what do you recommend that the government can do to help the country? Or what can you recommend for the international society to do to help to move forward? I literally ask people's opinion for that. Because if you ask them, they'll feel there's an impact, there's a positive impact. But if you don't ask them, they're gonna give you negative energy, frustration, expectations, and you feel you didn't do much. You feel you just wasted your time. Uh, but I believe that mentorship is important and networking can help with that actually. And we can build on networks. I'm more than happy to also connect anyone with decolonization project we have at Exeter University. It's called decolonization within the education system. I'm
Okay.
sure I'm sure this might be interesting for some. I'll be more than happy to connect it. I am part of the group, but sadly, I've been focusing on the thesis lately, so I
Yeah.
couldn't communicate much.
This is how you empower yourself to continue empowering others. Please put your please put where we can find more information. If there is a link for that, uh,
Mhm.
put it on the private chat, and I'm happy to share it. And just before I end, going back to the topic of mentorship and pooling resources. I know Iman had to run. She will be back for the panel later on this evening. The panel is at 6:15 Eastern Standard Time.
Mm.
And it is for Afro-centric archaeology. But I do want to share the screen for those tuned in and maybe have not heard of the Ubuntu Fellowship yet. This is one of the things that we are doing here at Africa Week 2020.
Mm.
Here, can you see the screen? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Ubuntu. I am because we are, and we are in this together. We're in this together, so we show up for one another. As a family, we will teach one another and learn from one another and take from one another something to build on for all of us.
What we do with this fellowship, I hope Iman will go back into the rest of this and see it, or maybe she click on the link, is every person we ask to comment or present something that they are working on, we ask that they
Mm.
all commit to extend their knowledge to two fellows, one from the diaspora and one from the continent, and
Oh,
share
okay.
knowledge. You know, if they are recent graduates in political science, let's say, then
Mm.
we have Jihad here who did political science. We have Jean-Michel who studied international law. We have, I don't know who studied, Inas who did international law. We're able to pair and say, okay, go and do this. They are working on a project, they need help with X, Y, and Z. Because we have our recent graduates or soon to be graduates who are who need to build up their resumes or their CVs because this world works that way.
Yeah,
And
I know.
they need
I
to get
understand.
their experience in these fields before actual graduation or shortly after, but they need to be doing it in their field. You know, right now, because of how the system is in general in the situation around the world, they'll end up being in an internship that will have them send an email or make coffee or make tea or organize a meeting and not actually be in their field, you know. But for example, let's say you start your own think tank or your own consultancy in political analysis, yeah, and you need
Mm.
help with someone who will do some background research for you. You are able to have an Ubuntu fellow, someone who comes to the Africa Week 2020 family and engages directly, and you're able to take them and say, okay, I will give you some research, some things for you to research, and I will use this, and in return, I will mentor you or coach you as you prepare for your masters or as you pick your PhD process, or as
That's,
something that that's it.
that's really awesome. Dear.
We have to, this is the community, we have to grassroots, you know, because
Precisely.
we are that power. This is what I mean. Knowledge is power. We know how to do certain things. No one taught you how to navigate the PhD the way you personally found out how to navigate that PhD. Because anyone ever told you about preparing you for a PhD did not prepare you for the PhD the way you experienced the PhD.
Precisely. We all have to experience 4 part-time jobs and a PhD.
The things you had to juggle, the things you had to do, no one can prepare you for. So you have a unique set of skills, which makes a very unique power, which you can impart onto others. And this is why we say two Ubuntu fellows, not just one, because you have two arms. Yeah, right now, alhamdulillah, you have two arms. But not everyone has them. But when we reach out, we want to reach out from both sides. We want to reach out so that we are the actual bridge. We are reaching out to the continent, but we are also reaching out to the diaspora. If you are training two at the same time, then these are two people who will have your knowledge embedded in them, and then they will pass it on to someone else. They will pass it on to two other people, and it will
I love
continue.
that. It's a positive impact. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. And it comes in very handy because you know what? The day you decide you're going to start with consulting or your political analysis, you will need help. You can't do it alone. And I don't know who's going to invest in you, considering you're going to be a thorn in people's sides. People will not necessarily want to put money towards you so that you continue to point the finger at the work that they are not doing correctly, right?
Of course not.
So you will need your people to get up and have your back to help to allow you to do what you're doing. Why should you bog yourself down by doing basic things that you already know how to do? Wouldn't you rather help someone learn how to do it?
I would be more than happy to help people. I mean, I've always loved helping people.
Exactly. So I think that's a starting point, mentoring, and this also ends up allowing us to pool our resources because real currency is real. We don't need money necessarily to help us grow in that sense. Your expertise, your ability to analyze things, to write policies, briefing policies, newspapers, white papers, articles, your ability to write these things, I would have to pay someone to do it. But if I have you, I would be able to email you and say, hey, Jihad, do you have time to help me write this? Do you have time to give a workshop on how to write a policy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Tawali, yes, I'll be more than happy if you ask. I mean, I think that's what I've been known by in the university, in the whole city of Exeter now. Anything wants to be done, ask Jihad. Tawali, خلاص. Want a simple take a book to the library? We'll be more than happy. Want to help you publish an article? Tawali. Let's get it through. Want you to connect you to someone to help you with these papers? Tawali. I think it's in us, in general, it's in us in Africa a lot. We always do this. And that's a great thing at us in Africa and also the rest of the world. We all love to help each other at the end of the day.
But we need to be able to use that for our advancement. Yeah, we're great at doing that on a friend-to-friend level. We need to be able to take it to a more Pan-African level, on a more familial level. And this is why I'm always so happy to see the people who are coming through to this, who are coming through to our platform. I know getting to the right come through. I know you're going to tell people about this discussion. You will tell people about the information that you acquired here. And so our next Africa Week, your people will come through, and your people will tell other people to come through. And this is how it works on a very different level.
Precisely, and it's always wonderful if you can help someone because it gives you a good feeling about yourself. You help someone, it gives you a good feeling like, okay, I didn't have the money, but I did contribute positively to help someone, and I'm happy about that. Of course, if I had the money, I would do it. But I mean, one day I'll open a foundation like
Struggle is real.
I'm gonna do it really. I mean, Mo Brahim did it, so I can do it too. I'll do it like Mo.
No, you're much better than Mo Brahim. You'll do it a lot better than Mo Brahim.
And I'm gonna open the foundation, and we're gonna have scholarships. It's gonna be an awesome scholarship fund for everyone. And
We need to find ways to connect with one another. We need to find ways to help and uplift one another in a more substantial manner to the work that we are doing. And on that note, um, we will end this conversation here, and we'll let you know that we have, well, the rest of the program is rich, obviously, and the calendar is here. I will drop it again in the comments. If you need a reminder, it is right here. We have a very interesting channel later, well, a discussion, a radio channel that's coming back to life,
oh,
this circle,
mm,
and it is well, I will leave Penny to tell us about that. And then we have the panel called Witnessing the Case for Afro-centric Archaeology. Tomorrow, hopefully, we will have Jihad come back here and join us on the discussion for the Black Global Lives Movement.
I look forward to it.
Lives Movement, which is a discussion on making sense of all the nonsense.
I realize it.
Away from well, not away because it's all based on research, because it's all facts that we're going to be discussing, but we connect all the different struggles that are happening around the world for Black people and people of African ancestry, well, people of African ancestry around the world. How can we connect them to help make sense of what's going on? How can we know why what is happening in DRC is connected to what's happening in Sudan, is connected to what's happening in Ethiopia, is connected to what's happening in Mali and southern Cameroon, and here in Baltimore and Texas and in Brazil.
I love those connections. Yes.
Stay with us. Tomorrow we will be making sense of nonsense, and later today we will be making the case for Afro-centric archaeology. In the meantime, do refresh the page. Alexandra is on another discussion, so to refresh the page, you will see her panel come through, and she's having 60 a conversation on how, with Eze, on how to turn our body into healers and how to leverage the spirituality to help heal our traumas and heal our bodies from all that is ailing us. In the meantime, I thank you for tuning in and wish you a great day. Jihad, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned, stay with us here. We're going to run the end credits, and then you and I can have a little catch up after.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very